Mason Parker stood at the edge of his Manhattan penthouse balcony, 38 floors above the city that had made him millions. The cool morning air kissed his bare feet as he gazed at the skyline. At 42, he had everything money could buy: the successful hedge fund, the luxury cars, the designer wardrobe. Yet emptiness echoed through his soul like wind through an abandoned building. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered to the rising sun. 3 months ago, his younger brother Caleb had died in a hiking accident in Nepal. They'd grown apart as Mason climbed the corporate ladder, while Caleb chose a simpler life devoted to humanitarian work. Mason had received Caleb's journal in the mail last week, filled with observations about connecting with the earth and finding meaning in simplicity. "The modern man has lost touch with the ground beneath him," Caleb had written. "We wrap our feet in expensive leather and synthetic materials, disconnecting ourselves from the very planet we walk upon." Those words haunted Mason, becoming a mirror, reflecting his own disconnection from nature, from purpose, from authentic human experience. That morning, Mason made a decision that would change everything. He would honor Caleb by walking barefoot for an entire year. No exceptions. No matter the weather, the terrain, or the social consequences. His assistant, Claire, gasped when he announced his plan during their morning meeting. "Mason, you have the Wellington merger next week, the board meeting in Chicago, the charity gala at the Metropolitan. You can't possibly attend barefoot." "I can, and I will." His voice carried the quiet certainty that had helped him close billion-dollar deals. Of his strange vow spread quickly through the financial district. CNBC ran a segment titled "Barefoot Billionaire, Mental Break or Marketing Stunt." Former colleagues called, concerned about his mental health. His mother cried over the phone, begging him to see a therapist. Only his ex-wife Rebecca seemed to understand. "He's finally having the breakdown I've been expecting for years," she told their mutual friends. "Maybe now he'll remember he's human." The first business meeting was the hardest. Mason felt vulnerable walking into the towering glass headquarters of Wellington Industries without shoes, feeling the cold marble floor beneath his feet. Whispers followed him across the lobby. Security almost denied him entry until the CEO himself intervened. "I don't care if he comes in wearing a chicken suit," Wellington had barked. "The man makes money appear out of thin air." That night, Mason wrote in his own journal, "Day 1, my feet hurt. My pride hurts more. But for they. First time since Caleb died, I feel something real." I think this is what he meant about connection. When you can feel the ground beneath you, you remember that you're part of something larger than quarterly profits and market shares. You remember you're alive. Little did Mason know that his barefoot journey was about to lead him down paths he never could have imagined. By the end of the first month, Mason's feet were a battlefield of blisters, cuts, and calluses. Every morning, he sat on the edge of his Italian marble bathtub, cleaning wounds and applying ointments before facing another day of concrete, tile, and judging eyes. "You're developing quite a thick skin," remarked Dr. Sophia Reyes during one of his weekly checkups. The doctor had agreed to monitor his health throughout the year-long experiment. What had begun as professional curiosity was evolving into something more as she documented the changes in his gait, posture, and surprisingly, his blood pressure, which had dropped significantly. "Not just on my feet," Mason replied, watching her bandage a particularly nasty cut on his heel. "You should hear what they're saying about me on CNBC now." The financial world had been merciless. Competitors whispered that he'd lost his edge. 2 major clients pulled their portfolios. His board called an emergency meeting, concerned about the company's image. Mason attended in his usual impeccable suit paired incongruously with bare, bandaged feet. "This barefoot stunt has cost us." The Daniels account, Board member Richard Thompson spat across the conference table. $30 million walked out the door because our CEO has decided to become some kind of hippie. Mason remained calm. But Daniel's account left because our last 3 recommendations underperformed, not because of my feet. He placed his portfolio on the table. These are the numbers from my personal trades this month. I've never been more focused. The room fell silent as they reviewed his astonishing returns. Walking barefoot had fundamentally changed how Mason moved through the world. He'd become acutely aware of his surroundings, noticing subtle market shifts he might have previously missed. Without the buffer of shoes, he felt everything more intensely, including the economic tremors that signaled opportunity. Outside the boardroom, however, life was increasingly difficult. Restaurants refused him service. Doormen had exclusive. Clubs blocked his entry. Former friends stopped returning his calls. The isolation was crushing. On a particularly cold evening, Mason found himself walking through Central Park, his feet numb against the frozen ground. The physical pain had become manageable, but the loneliness felt unbearable. "Hey, Shoeless Joe!" A harsh voice called out from the darkness. 3 men approached, their intentions clear in their stance. Nice watch for a homeless guy. Mason had navigated hostile takeovers and market crashes, but street violence was outside his expertise. As the men surrounded him, he realized how vulnerable he truly was. No security team, no town car waiting, just a man with bare feet about to be robbed or worse. The first punch caught him in the stomach, doubling him over. As he struggled to breathe, a strange thought flashed through his mind. "Caleb, is this what you meant by connecting with reality?" Just as the second blow was coming, a commanding voice cut through the darkness. "NYPD, step away from him now." "Officer." Elena Ramirez had been patrolling Central Park when she spotted the assault. After scattering Mason's attackers and calling for medical assistance, she recognized the Barefoot victim from the news. "You're that Wall Street guy," she said, helping him onto a park bench. "The one who gave up shoes?" Mason nodded, wincing as he examined a new cut on his foot. "That's me, the crazy barefoot billionaire." "Not crazy," Elena said, surprising him. "My abuelo, my grandfather, never wore shoes back in his village in Mexico. Said it kept him connected to the earth." She paused, studying his face. Though he wasn't running a hedge fund in Manhattan. There was something refreshing about Elena's lack of judgment. As they waited for the medics, she shared stories about her grandfather, who believed modern conveniences disconnected people from what mattered. Mason found himself telling her about Caleb, something he rarely discussed with anyone. "Your brother sounds like he was a wise man," Elena said. "Wiser than me, that's for sure. He actually lived his values. I just accumulated things." After declining a trip to the emergency room, Mason impulsively invited Elena for coffee. To his surprise, she accepted. That night marked a turning point. Elena wasn't impressed by his wealth or status. She challenged his perspectives, asked difficult questions about his motivations, and laughed openly at his stories of navigating high society without shoes. "You know what's ironic?" she said over their third cup of coffee. "You've probably experienced more of real New York in the past month than in all your years here." She was right. Without the buffer of drivers and assistants, Mason had been forced to navigate the city in ways he never had before. He'd discovered neighborhood bakeries, small parks, and community gardens. He'd spoken with hot dog vendors, street musicians, and elderly people feeding pigeons. Everyday encounters his previous lifestyle had shielded him from. Over the next few weeks, Elena became his unofficial guide to a New York he'd never known. On her days off, they explored hidden corners of the city. She showed him vibrant communities in the outer boroughs, introduced him to authentic family restaurants, and once, memorably, convinced him to dance barefoot at a Puerto Rican street festival in the Bronx. Mason found himself drawn to Elena's straightforward nature and passionate commitment to her community. She, in turn, was intrigued by his willingness to abandon comfort for principle. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening at work. Mason's investment strategies, once coldly calculated for maximum profit, began shifting. He started researching companies with strong environmental practices and fair labor policies concerns that would have seemed irrelevant to him before. "You're developing a conscience," his assistant Claire observed one afternoon, reviewing his new portfolio recommendations. "I'm developing perspective," Mason corrected her. "It's hard to ignore the real world when you feel every piece of garbage on the sidewalk." What had begun as a tribute to his brother was evolving into something more profound, a complete reevaluation of what success truly meant. And at the center of this transformation was a police officer who saw beyond his wealth to the searching human beneath Dot. But as summer approached, bringing scorching sidewalks and new challenges, Mason couldn't ignore a troubling realization. He was falling in love with Alana, even as his barefoot journey continued to wreak havoc on his professional reputation. Asterisk. Summer in New York turned the city into a barefoot obstacle course. Pavement hot enough to fry eggs. Melting tar that stuck between Mason's toes. Metal subway grates that burned like branding irons. Each step became a meditation on endurance. Despite these challenges, Mason's unconventional journey had begun attracting positive attention. A documentary filmmaker approached him about chronicling his experience. A major athletic shoe company ironically offered him a sponsorship deal. Social media buzzed with the hashtag Barefoot Billionaire as people debated whether he was a visionary or a madman. The most surprising development came from Dr. Sophia Reyes, who had been documenting his physiological changes. "Your results are remarkable," she explained during his 6-month checkup. "Your balance has improved by 40%. Your neurological responses are sharper. The microbial diversity on your feet is unprecedented in my research. Walking barefoot has fundamentally altered how your body functions." She wanted to publish her findings in a medical journal. This could change how we think about modern footwear and its impact on human health. Mason agreed, but his mind was elsewhere. His relationship with Elena had deepened over the summer months, yet remained undefined. Their worlds were so different, his penthouse and boardrooms, her modest Queens apartment and police beat. She never seemed entirely comfortable in his luxury surroundings, while he was still learning to navigate her community without appearing like a wealthy tourist. One evening, they sat on her rooftop, sharing takeout as the sun set over the city. Mason had just declined a television interview for the 3rd time that week. "Why are you dodging the publicity?" Elena asked. "Your story is inspiring people." Mason hesitated. "Because their narrative is all wrong. They want to paint me as some eccentric billionaire having a spiritual awakening." He looked down at his calloused feet. "But this isn't about inspiration or spirituality. It's about penance." Word hung between them. Penance for what? Elena's voice was gentle. "For Caleb." Mason's throat tightened. 2 years ago, he asked me to fund a medical clinic in rural Nepal. It would have cost less than my car collection. I told him I'd think about it, but never got around to it. I was too busy making more money I didn't need. He wiped his eyes. If I'd funded that clinic, he might have been there instead of on that mountain when the earthquake hit. Elena took his hand. "You can't know that, but I know who I was." Mason's voice broke. Someone who valued wealth over his own brothers. "Life work. This barefoot year isn't honoring Caleb. It's me punishing myself for failing him." The revelation hung in the air between them, the truth finally exposed like a raw nerve. Elena moved closer. her presence a silent comfort as Mason confronted the guilt he'd been carrying beneath his barefoot journey. Perhaps, she said finally, it began as penance. But look at what it's becoming, something that's helping others. Changing perspectives, maybe even advancing medical understanding. Isn't that what Caleb would have wanted? Mason hadn't considered this possibility, that his act of penance could transform into something meaningful beyond his personal atonement. You still have 6 months left, Kalena reminded him. Long enough to turn this journey into something that truly honors your brother. Part 5. The purpose as autumn leaves crunched beneath Mason's increasingly tough feet. His barefoot journey took an unexpected turn. Dr. Reyes's medical paper had been published to significant acclaim, sparking international interest in the health benefits of barefoot living. Researchers from universities worldwide contacted Mason, requesting participation in studies, but rather than shy away from the attention, Mason embraced it with newfound purpose. He established the Caleb Parker Foundation, dedicated to funding medical clinics in underserved regions of Nepal and researching natural approaches to health and wellness. My brother believed in connecting people with the earth and with each other, Mason explained at the foundation's launch event, standing barefoot at the podium. This foundation will continue his work, bridging modern medicine with traditional wisdom. Elena stood in the audience, her proud smile fueling his confidence. Their relationship had deepened, though not without challenges. Her fellow officers teased her about dating the barefoot billionaire, while Mason's social circle struggled to accept a police officer in their midst. You know, you could wear shoes again once your year is up, Elena mentioned one evening as they walked through falling leaves in Prospect Park. The foundation is established. You've made your point. Mason stopped, considering this for the first time. I'm not sure I want to go back. He wiggled his toes in the cool grass. There's something honest about feeling the world directly. No barriers. Like relationships, Elena said pointedly. Mason understood her meaning. Despite their growing closeness, he still maintained certain walls, emotional reserves that protected the vulnerable parts of himself, just as shoes once protected his feet. That night, they encountered one of Mason's former clients at a restaurant. A petroleum executive whose environmentally destructive business practices Mason had previously ignored for the sake of profit. The man mocked Mason's bare feet and new foundation. Gone soft in more ways than one, eh, Parker? All this barefoot hippie nonsense is costing you millions. Rather than retreat into embarrassment, Mason stood firm. I'm investing in different returns now. After the encounter, Elena squeezed his hand. You've changed. For better or worse? Definitely. Better. You're more present, more real. She hesitated. But sometimes I wonder if I fit into this new life you're creating. The question caught Mason off guard. What do you mean? Your world is still about wealth and influence, just directed differently. Mine is street patrols and community policing. Eventually, our paths met because I chose to feel the ground beneath me, Mason interrupted. To stop hiding inside expensive shoes and cars and offices. Meeting you wasn't an accident, Elena. It was the point. As autumn's chill deepened toward winter, Mason faced his greatest physical challenge yet. Frostbite became a genuine concern as temperatures dropped below freezing. Dr. Reyes advised modifications to his barefoot commitment, even indigenous. Cultures that practice barefoot living make adaptations for extreme weather, she warned. But Mason remained resolute, developing strategies for limited outdoor exposure and natural circulation techniques. The media portrayed his determination as inspiring persistence. Only Elena recognized it for what it truly was, the lingering penance of a man still not convinced he deserved happiness. You don't have to keep punishing yourself, she told him. One snowy evening, as he warmed his reddened feet by her fireplace, Caleb would want you to live, not just endure. Her words penetrated deeper than the cold ever could. Part 6. The Transformation. On the final day of his barefoot year, Mason stood at the same balcony where his journey had begun. Snow fell gently around him, melting against his bare feet. Beside him was a shoebox containing Italian leather Oxfords, his former favorite footwear. "Are you going to put them on?" Elena asked, wrapped in a warm coat beside him. Mason studied the expensive shoes. "They represent who I used to be. And who are you now?" The question lingered in the winter air. Over the past year, Mason had transformed. Physically, his feet calloused but strong, his posture improved, his body leaner for walking everywhere. But the internal changes ran deeper. His hedge fund had evolved into an ethical investment firm, backing sustainable businesses and community development projects. The Caleb Parker Foundation had established 3 medical clinics in Nepal and funded innovative research on natural health practices. Most significantly, Mason had reconnected with his family, rebuilding relationships neglected during his years of single-minded wealth accumulation. And then there was Elena, the unexpected heart of his journey. "I'm someone who finally understands what my brother meant," Mason answered, turning to face her. "Connection isn't just about feeling the ground beneath your feet. It's about removing the barriers between yourself and what matters: people, purpose, truth." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Which is why I want to ask you something important." Elena's eyes widened as he knelt barefoot in the snow. "I love you, Elena. You saw me when I was invisible behind my wealth. You taught me that true luxury isn't about possessions. It's about living authentically." He opened the box, revealing not a diamond ring, but a simple band of polished wood. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Elena's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." As they embraced, media helicopters hovered nearby, capturing the moment for evening news. The barefoot billionaire's journey had become a national fascination, but few understood its true significance. Later that evening, at a press conference announcing the completion of his barefoot year, reporters asked the question everyone wanted answered: would he put his shoes back on? Mason smiled, holding Elena's hand. "Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. While I may occasionally wear footwear for specific circumstances, my barefoot journey has become part of who I am." He announced an expanded mission for the Caleb Parker Foundation, including urban renewal projects in neglected neighborhoods like those Elena patrolled, and educational programs teaching sustainability and mindful living.